Everybody, thank you for coming in and watching. Sam, thank you for coming in and being on here. This is the Art of Mindful Medicine, episode number 23. I am Dr. Seth Gilson, a biological dentist, certified yoga teacher, and personal coach, and the host of this lovely show I created. And my awesome guest today is Dr. Sam Madeira. And Dr. Madeira earned his Bachelor of Sciences degree in herbal medicines and doctorate degree in naturopathic medicine from Bastyr University in Washington. Dr. Madeira works with adult men and women 20 years old and up. His clinical passions are botanical medicine, functional endocrinology, and cutting-edge health span and longevity science. In May 2015, he founded Apollo Health Clinic to merge his passions and help patients live their best lives. In 2019, Dr. Madeira was voted by his medical colleagues in the greater Seattle metropolitan area as a top Seattle naturopathic doctor. To learn more about how he works with his male patients, check out his podcast for men's hormone health, The Dr. Madeira Show. The podcast is found on all major platforms where podcasts are streamed. Dr. Madeira enjoys spending time with family and friends, skiing, hiking, reading, writing, and traveling. His life work is to assist his patients in reaching their wellness goals by guiding them to find their unique root cause and transformative path to health. Sam, again, thank you very much for coming on here. Really appreciate you taking some time in your day to be with us. And as always, I always love to start with gratitude. So if you could please tell us 3 things that you are grateful for today.
Sure. The sunshine, because I'm usually in Seattle or Northwest Montana, which both I think get less than 152 days of sunshine a year.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I'm grateful that I have the privilege to do what I do, and I am working with my patients that many of them become close friends, and we work as a team, and it's a lot of good stuff happening there. And they teach me things and I teach them things, and there's a lot of give and take. So it's a two-way street. So I'm really grateful for that. And kind of what was alluded to there in the part of my bio that you read, I didn't think I would be an entrepreneur when I went to naturopathic medical school. I thought I would be working in New Hampshire at Dr. James Diadamo's clinic. He's now passed away. His son Peter is still alive and lives in Connecticut. Yeah, so first 2 were sunshine, and then working with my patients. And the third one is just kind of grateful that the way the universe does things, I was kind of tricked into becoming an entrepreneur, which I think was a better fit for me anyway than working for people that were horrible bosses, frankly. So, which is probably why I write about that a lot, because I also have patients that are, in similar, if not similar but different situations that I was in before, so I can relate to them. But yeah, I'm grateful that I have the ability to run my own business, even though it has been very, very stressful for the last 5.5 plus years. So
it can be. That is what running a business is like. All right, so let's talk a little bit about you. I want to know a little bit about your youth. What was it like growing up? Where are you from? Things like that.
Mm-hmm. Sure, yeah. From New Hampshire and Vermont, born and raised in New Hampshire until I was about 8, and then we moved just over the river, right across the river from Hanover, New Hampshire, where Dartmouth College is, which is an Ivy League school, if you haven't heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grew up in that area. It's called the Upper River Valley, the Upper Valley. And, a lot of educated people from all over the world at Dartmouth, combined with blue-collar people like my dad who worked construction. And a lot of my friends who I went to school with, their parents were either professors at Dartmouth or doctors or lawyers. So I was kind of surrounded by an interesting multicultural mix in rural northern New England, which is pretty uncommon there. And was definitely influenced by my grandparents. And my grandfather, who's now passed away, was chemical engineer and went to Harvard and MIT. So education was always pushed heavily, do well in school, mm-hmm. and get the highest degree that you can and all that kind of stuff. And he wanted me to become an MD, and I argued with him on that for quite a bit when I was in high school. And so long story short, I had 2 brothers. I'm the middle child, grew up playing rough and tough in the woods and summers on the rivers and streams and biking,
I was going to say
all day long. Yeah, outside. We grew up outside. It was basically grab $5 from mom or dad and leave the house and come back at sundown
Yeah.
in the summer anyway. So
Yeah, right. In the summers
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. Grew up skiing, hiking, uh, playing with friends. Playing sports. I played every sport I could play. At one point, I was in the winter. I was playing basketball, ski racing, and other times tried cross country skiing and ski jumping, pretty much all in one winter. So
So as you were saying, you were talking a little bit about your youth and growing up, and I, I know it cut you off right in the middle. So
yeah, so I grew up with brothers basically playing in outdoors, for in a climate that was, really hot, humid summers in the Northeast and cold winters, and skiing and sledding, and playing with our bikes by ourselves, and basically leave the house in the summer right after breakfast and come back right before sundown,
hmm
or after sundown even, and played pretty much
so
every sport.
so as a child, what's something you always wanted to be when you grew up?
Um, I guess it depends at what age. When I was in like early grade school, we had this circus come to town. The guy who like ran the circus actually
hmm
was a Dartmouth College alumni, so
Okay.
they always came to Hanover at the end of August, and it's called the Big Apple Circus. And there are the guys who were doing like the high trapeze stunts,
hmm
and they would do like three flips and then catch each other, and they would have women that did their routines with them, and I always thought that was like the coolest thing. And I was probably like seven, so, or
Yeah.
six. By the time I was in middle school, I was really into like U.S. government history and all that kind of stuff. So I was thinking more like maybe a lawyer or something like that, or
Hmm.
more politics, not politics, but more like law. And I
hmm
was talked out of that very quickly by my family, who apparently didn't like lawyers, or doesn't. Um, I have friends that are lawyers, so I don't really care. But if someone's a lawyer listening. And then by the time I was a sophomore, end of sophomore year in high school, I was thinking more and more about medicine because I really liked biology. I liked the life sciences, and really got into botany in undergrad. So I was really curious, and I didn't know what it was called yet, but I was really curious, like how different cultures used plants for medicine, and
hmm
that's kind of what led me to my undergraduate degree. Um, and kind of like medicinal ethnobotany is the scientific lingo for it, but like all cultures for thousands of years, everybody in their kitchens and from their farm to table kind of stuff, we're using spices for medicine and
hmm
other things like that. So I was curious about that because, and that's kind of how things had always been. I still was very much considering like becoming a surgeon.
hmm
So by the time I was a senior in high school, I essentially graduated early, and then my spring semester was spent getting my wilderness EMT. I already had my wilderness first responder, so it was basically 2 week intensive EMT course,
hmm
EMT basic course, and then volunteering in the ER twice, 2 days a week, and the ambulance 2 days a week, and then observing in the OR 1 day a week for like almost 3 months, I think. And then I
hmm
worked on the ski patrol after that, after my first year of college. So I got to see a lot of stuff, and I decided very quickly within that 3 month period, my senior year in high school, that I did not want to be a surgeon because I wanted to work with people who I could talk to. And if you've ever had a surgery, you talk to the surgeon for about 30 to 60 seconds before the surgery, maybe a little bit longer. And then if you're awake, you remember, you talk to them about another 60 seconds after the surgery. And then
hmm
the anesthesiologist or the nurse gives you whatever meds you need or script for some meds, and then you're out of there. So I I think surgery definitely has its place, especially if it's life saving, or there's something that needs to be done. And I respect surgeons. However, it wasn't my path, and I knew that at a pretty young age. So I'm grateful that I was able to kind of be tuned into that stuff, and I had people in my life kind of pushing me to explore all types of medicine,
Awesome.
unbiasedly. and figure out what I wanted to do.
That's really important. I had some similar experiences um, volunteering in hospitals and in the OR, the ER, the ICU, interventional radiology, things like that. And I pretty quick. I mean, funny enough, I do surgeries on people, but they're awake. So,
Right.
right. I just knew I knew that environment wasn't for me. So I can definitely relate to exactly what you're talking about. So, when did you start changing your own lifestyle for health optimization, and why?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I didn't know why, but in high school, right around my sophomore year, I was pretty young, mostly healthy. I was, doing really well in school and playing some varsity sports in middle school, and then early high school, end of freshman year, beginning of sophomore year, I got chronic fatigue syndrome and was very depressed because of the chronic fatigue syndrome. I wasn't actually depressed on my own. And this is late 90s, maybe 97, 98, 99, right around in there. And I found through my family, they found Dr. James C. Adamo in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where his clinic is and still is there. And I started going to see him between sophomore and junior year. I also switched schools because I wasn't really liking the most of the people. I had a lot of friends at my school, but I didn't really like the culture of my school.
Mm-hmm.
So I found a different school that was more about like, environmental stuff and nature and kind of more of the values that I grew up with.
So, what's
And
chronic fatigue syndrome, though?
yeah, so it took a while to find the root cause, but I started changing what I ate. James C. Adamo, if people don't know who he is, he found what the blood type in his clinical rounds in Europe as a naturopathic doctor and chiropractor. And classically, naturopathic medicine, everybody was given a vegetarian diet. And that's because in the 1800s, a lot of meat was really bad for you because the way that, if you read, I forget the books, but if you read the books about what was happening in the slaughterhouses at that time and how people were getting sick from it, and it was getting mixed with like animal crap, basically. And then people were getting sick from that. So naturopathic doctors just said no meat, but now we have access to like free range meat and stuff. So what he found is that 50% of people were not getting well in a vegetarian diet and roughly 50% were. So he was like, well, maybe it's blood type because blood type's genetic. So my blood type's AB. And so I was put on that blood type diet and did a lot of therapies every week at his clinic. And I got a lot better. But they didn't find the root cause. So it took until about 2013 until they found out it was like Lyme co-infections,
Wow.
reactivated mono, reactivated CMV. And Dr. Paul Anderson was my doctor, and he did the blood test and found that out actually after I finished medical school. So
I was going to say that's a long time.
yeah, so I had a lot of ups and downs from end of the 90s until 2013, about 14 years. I was feeling better, and then I was feeling worse. And then when I moved from Arizona to Seattle, I got very sick. I was basically getting an infection, upper respiratory infections every month. And
Jeez.
a lot of doctors, frankly, sucked and they missed it. And some of those were naturopathic doctors, so no offense to my colleagues. But Dr. Paul Anderson, who's one of my mentors and teachers, he was my doctor, and I was actually shadowing after I graduated. And I was like, hey, I want to be your patient too. And he's like, yeah, whatever, let's do it. So he was like, yeah, you got all these infections, and then I had my tonsils taken out because Dr. Klinghardt, MD, PhD, recommends that for chronic tonsillitis. That was not literally, I tried everything. Like pretty much, I was gargling hydrogen peroxide. I was getting hydrogen peroxide IVs. I was getting IV vitamin C, all kinds of stuff, and they did not go down in size. So I got that surgery, which sucked. As an adult, it's not fun. But I got better and better from 2013, end of 2013 onward. And it's, I'm on less medications, less supplements. Unfortunately, with chronic Lyme disease, Dr. Darren Ingalls is an expert in this too. He's a naturopathic doctor down in Southern California. He used to be in Connecticut. And he says that on average, 400,000 North Americans are diagnosed with Lyme disease every year.
Wow.
So a portion of those are going to go on to have chronic Lyme disease, which relapses and can become MS. It can become cancers. It can become Parkinson's, Alzheimer's if you don't treat it. So it's an autoimmune like disease. So you have to stay on top of it. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like you can, where other people who don't have that kind of stuff, they can kind of slack on their health. Sleep's important, all the immune support
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
not
You have
just
to have
like taking,
you have to have a
yeah.
real routine for yourself.
Yeah. So once I got a root cause diagnosis, I wasn't just like blindfolded throwing darts, trying to throw
Yeah,
darts at a dartboard, and that's what I usually tell my patients, is that if we don't find the root cause diagnosis, then it's really easy to take a questionnaire or a general blood test, or even some other lab tests, and just kind of say like, oh, well, you need some B12 and vitamin D. And then they're
yeah,
like, well, I don't feel any different.
yeah,
Like most people could benefit probably a little bit of B12 and vitamin D, but is it going to move the needle from
yeah,
feeling like crap to feeling amazing? Probably not, unless your vitamin D is like 15,
yeah, yeah.
which mine was 18 when I moved from
Jeez,
Arizona to
wow.
Seattle.
It should be
Um,
like 50 or so, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
50 is ideal if you have autoimmune like disease or chronic infections. Isabella Wentz says for like autoimmune disease thyroiditis 60 to 80. But most people who don't have autoimmune disease, 35 to 50 is enough. And ideally, you're getting it from the sun because genetically, you might just need to get more sun exposure. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of those people. I have some Southern European genetics, and I need to be in the sun more. So, being in Florida this winter is the first year in a long time that I don't have seasonal affective disorder.
I was gonna say you probably feel really good.
Yeah, it feels
Yeah,
great.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great place to be in the winter, I think.
So
Um,
somebody asked, Alice actually asked about it, whether it was if you ever considered mold toxicity
Yeah, mold, what hasn't really been, that's a great question. I have patients with mold, and it definitely affects thyroid and testosterone.
because it's similar
Um,
to symptoms of Lyme disease, right?
yeah, mold hasn't really been a big issue for me personally. I haven't had, I had an acute exposure. I have experienced mold toxicity in my mom's house when I went back when she still lived in Vermont for vacation, winter vacation after the beginning of my first year of medical
Mm-hmm.
school. And I got a cough, I got brain fog, fatigue, and it felt like a viral bronchitis, but it wasn't. And then when I went home after a week, all those symptoms went away and I was fine.
Awesome.
So I don't have any symptoms of mold. I don't have brain fog. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
fatigue. But yes, there's people like I have patients that have, gut infections, mold, Lyme, all kinds of stuff. And they're, or they have mold and chronic fatigue. And they're like, I want to figure out why I have low hormones, low testosterone, low thyroid, low female hormones. And it is mold. And that's very common in any water damaged building or office building or
Mm-hmm.
space where you're spending a lot of time. What happens a lot in northern New England is that when you have people staying in your home who don't understand that pipes freeze when you turn the heat off. I think something happened. My mom was out of town and she's renting out a room to somebody, probably a Dartmouth College student, and they left the heat off, and the pipes in the below the first floor in the roof of the basement froze and then burst and just
Yeah.
dumped water all over the basement, and all that stuff got moldy. So that happens a lot in northern latitudes. And then it's definitely a myth that there's no mold in places like Arizona or LA, because there is. You can have water damaged
Yeah, wherever you have water,
spaces
you can have
anywhere.
mold.
Yeah, and Florida is like the southeast is like a mold
Oh,
cesspool.
yeah,
It's
it's swamps.
prime.
They were in
Yeah,
swamps, so I mean,
swampy, moldy, humidity. But yeah, for me, I haven't. I mean, I can test for it again, I'm sure, but mold hasn't really been the main thing. I did a lot of heavy metal detox too. I've done a lot of sauna therapy. I've done
hmm
IV heavy metal chelation, which is hell. I've done a lot of that, and a lot of other things. So, I mean, it's been a journey of about 22 plus years
hmm
of getting to where I am now. So, I mean, if somebody is listening to this and you've been trying for a long time, maybe the root cause hasn't been found, and maybe you need to work with a practitioner who is more root cause oriented. And also, I like to let people know, like, have a little bit of patience. I mean, it took
Yeah.
many doctors who a lot of people look up to, who missed things, who I look up to or did look up to, miss things, who are teaching at my university, and it was 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, for lack of a better analogy, it's like peeling layers of an onion. Like, maybe you figure out your methylation status, and the next thing you figure out your infectious load and your viral load and your bacterial load and your gut microbiome health, and then mold. Not everybody has the resources and time, and unfortunately with these chronic illnesses, fatigue is the main symptom, and brain fatigue, brain fog, and memory problems. So and that causes low hormones, and usually people come to me and they're like, I just want to fix the hormones, like, just give me testosterone.
Yeah.
There's like at least 40% or more of those people like that, and it's like, well, if we don't take care of the mold, then you might get cancer.
Yeah.
So
The root cause. I
yeah.
feel like I feel it's important. Everybody needs to find their root cause, and
Yeah.
I feel like there is always a root cause, right? I
Yep.
mean that's certainly more your specialty than mine. But from everybody I've spoken to, is, I mean, there's always going to be a root cause for something, and to just bypass that and try and put a band-aid on a flesh wound or something like that, I mean, it just won't ever work long term, and most of the time it doesn't even work in the short term. So
Hmm.
um,
Exactly.
so with all these experiences you've had, and personally and professionally, and with all the doctors that you know, what would you say is the most valuable lesson you've learned in your life up to this point, obviously regarding health and wellness?
Yeah, I think a lot. If people are not feeling well, I think one of the biggest lessons is to just keep going and do your best and keep trying to find other people. I think a lot of what I see a lot of is people get attached to one person or one way of doing something. It's like, oh, well, if I juice all of these green things, then I'll feel better. And
Hmm.
it's like, it becomes very dogmatic. And then they look at this doctor or this person who published this book as like some biohacker god or goddess, and like they're going to save them and they're their savior. And what my message is like, nobody's going to save you. You're going to save yourself.
Yeah.
And how you're going to save yourself is being patient and diligent and finding a team of people. So that may look like working with a holistic dentist like you, working with a practitioner like me, working with a therapist or a health coach or a life coach, and then surrounding yourself with people in your life who are supportive and
Yeah.
maybe don't need to understand all the details of what you're going through, but aren't going to be like, oh, it's just all in your head, suck it up. Why can't you show up to all these things? And I had to basically tell people like, hey, I need to take care of myself. I don't feel well. I mean, I had people getting mad at me who I worked with for not showing up after a long day of work to their wedding that I said I would go to. And they're like mad at me, in this toxic work culture, because I'm like all day feeling like hell and I don't know why.
Hmm.
And I'm just, the fact that I show up to work was a heroic event for me, and worked 10 hours. And then they're like, why don't you come to my wedding now? And it's like, I need to go lie in bed. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like hell. So like, those are not your people, and just don't even just block it out, and just like Dory and Finding Nemo, just keep swimming forward,
Yeah.
blinders on,
I
and
totally agree with that.
keep going. And I've had some people I've worked with who gotten pretty upset when I said, it's time for you to go work with somebody else now. And that is kind of counterintuitive to running a successful business, maybe, to some people. But I think when you know that your time is up and you've helped somebody as much as you can, it's your ethical duty as a practitioner to say, this person, I believe this person is the next step. And then that person, you may retire from that person to another person. And that's the process of healing and peeling the onion layers off. And instead of getting attached to one way or one method and saying, you know, I'm not going to use any medications, because maybe you need to use that medication for 3 to 6 months, you know, or maybe I'm only going to use medications. Like in the world of Lyme, I've seen people not get well many, many times on oral and IV antibiotics. It's like the Lyme always comes back. It's always relapsed worse. And they're like, spent all this money on IV antibiotics and try to get insurance to cover it. And it's a big, effing mess. And it also, I think there's another part of this that may be hard for people to hear, is that you have to shed the victim archetype. You cannot get well if you're a victim. Because even though for me, like I pulled off like probably 20 ticks a week off of my ankles running around the woods growing up in Vermont. And then I went to school in Massachusetts in high school, and I was exposed to more ticks, and that's where I got sick. And very close to Lyme, Connecticut, where Lyme disease was discovered in, I believe, the late 80s or so. And they thought it was juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and it was Lyme, actually. And they called it Lyme because it was in Lyme, Connecticut. But Lyme is in all 50 states in the U.S. It's in Canada. With, climate change, we have places that are much warmer than ever. So the ticks are not dying off in the winter. They're staying, and then they're traveling on animals to more places. Animals are, migrating in different ways with this climate change. So all that
in contact with people a lot more now.
Yes, exactly. With, people moving, especially in the last year, people moving out of cities more into places like Montana or Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, Florida. There's, more developments moving into their habitats. And so we're closer to, these animals than we usually were. And so it would be easy for me to say like, well, these ticks did this to me. It's not my fault. It's something else's fault. Damn those ticks, and I'm angry at the universe or the God or the world or whatever, and I'm a victim, right? But there are definitely behaviors and lifestyles that make people's immune systems weaker, which is why not everybody who gets a tick bite, like my brothers don't have, as far as I know, I'm sure they were exposed to it, but my younger brother doesn't have Lyme. I think my older brother had a little bit too. But not everybody who gets a tick bite gets Lyme disease, and not everybody who has Lyme antibodies gets chronic Lyme. They may have acute Lyme, and maybe they get doxycycline for 2 weeks, which is the standard of care, and then it clears and it doesn't relapse. It is a parasitic spirochete bacterium, so it does, tend to burrow into areas of your body, so it's very hard to test for in the blood. But point being is that if you're a victim and you don't understand that psychology of being a victim, then you need to work with a psychologist or a life coach who can basically break your bubble, which would be very painful, and to realize that, yes, there's a percentage of the things that happened that were not in your control, and then there's a percentage that are under the controllables list, like under the serenity prayer, like, God, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can. That's the section, that's the sphere of your control, your responsibility in your life. And, just sleeping more, and, at the time when I was 17 years old, I was sleeping 13 to 17 hours a day, and I was still tired. So if someone told me you need to sleep more, I would be like, F you, I can barely function at sleeping 13 hours a day. And, but there are definitely things going on in my life, my nutrition or lack thereof, the people I was around, the things I was eating, the way I was exercising, that were depleting me and making my immune system weaker that I didn't know. So, yeah. I mean, there's a certain level of ignorance, but once you get that education, then you can say, okay, I didn't know those things would affect me that way. But now that I know, I'm going to change those so that I can have a better chance of getting well.
Yeah, it's a constant journey of learning. I mean, you
right.
learn, and you don't know what you don't know. So.
Exactly. And a lot of people don't know a lot of things, and especially in men's health, a lot of guys who I've talked to over the last 10, 11 years in clinical conversations, bowel movement, they're have, IBS-like symptoms, diarrhea and or constipation, and they're like, that's normal to some people, but that's not normal. So yeah, it's people's normal is unhealthy right now. Like most people that you talk to in your friend group, in your families, they have normalized chronic illness in their own life. It's like, yeah, it's normal to be overweight. It's normal to have diabetes. It's normal to feel fatigued half the day. It's normal not to sleep that much. Like all these things have become normalized so that when people start becoming healthy, it pulls on that family system or
Yeah.
that system in the community, and people start having to look at their own behavior, and then they start projecting their frustration onto you. Like, why are
And
you doing
their
this?
ego
Why are you a
takes a hit.
health freak? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, why are you a health freak? You
Yeah.
know, like when I started
I get it all the
changing,
time.
yeah, when I started changing my diet in high school, I was a teenager and I was cooking a lot of my meals at a boarding school, and people were like, "What are you, an effing rabbit?" And I was like,
I've gotten that one too.
why don't you go sit over there? You know, like I don't want to hear your bullshit because this makes me feel better.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of have like a tough skin and
Mm-hmm.
just realize you're doing it for you. And then also, if those people don't come around after a while, which if they're really your friends or really care about you, they will. And it may just take some education for them. Then they're not your people, you know,
Yeah.
and then you can find
Exactly.
new people that are on the same page and they're like, yeah, man, like I felt horrible too. And now I'm gluten free, or now I eat, you know, now I'm following Dr. Uh, whoever's protocol and eating 8 vegetables every meal, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, or I'm doing this and I'm, you know, eating only grass-fed beef and I feel so much better, and I don't, you know, eat any sugar anymore or whatever. And those can be your people, because there's a lot of people who have woken up and they realize that there's a great benefit to
Yeah.
invest in their health.
Absolutely. So I want to shift the topic a little bit. We're definitely going to come back to some of the things that we were talking about in a little bit more detail, but I want to discuss mindfulness a little bit. And what does mindfulness mean to you?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I feel like that word's become such a big concept word over the years. Mindfulness to me means slowing down enough so that I can be in the moment instead of somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes exercise or enjoying moments of like play, if you have kids or pets, and playing with them can get you like in the here and the now.
Yeah.
One
It
of the
pulls
things
you into the moment.
yeah, one of the things I studied actually in undergrad before I went to Bastyr, because I had to do 2 years before I did the rest. It's an undergrad completion program, the junior senior year of the herbal sciences, was positive psychology. And there's a famous positive psychologist at University of Pennsylvania. I forget his name right now. I think, but he's a PhD psychologist, and he talks a lot about being in like the groove of flow, and like professional athletes being in the
Flow
moment
state.
so much that
Yeah.
they're in that flow state. And I think when we're in that flow state, you know, you could be driving on a road trip. You could be listening to your favorite song with your friends in your living room, or lifting weights in the gym, and you're just like so in the moment, or you know, playing ultimate frisbee in a park,
Mm-hmm.
or pick up football in a park somewhere with some people, and you're just in the flow state and having such a good time. And I think that as much as we can kind of engender like things like gratitude, or like how you started the show today, I really like that. um, it can really change people's brains and increase things like dopamine. A lot of people are kind of tuned into serotonin maybe too much,
Mm-hmm.
but I think most of us have dopamine deficits today, which is why people are unmotivated or feel like they're quote unquote depressed, but they're actually dopamine deficient because they're on their screens all the time, and it's just like dopamine dump after dopamine dump in
Yeah.
the brain, and it's hitting that dopaminergic kind of gratification addiction pathway through the brain pathways. And they're, some people might not even be aware of it, other people might be, but like all these apps are designed to hit that dopamine pathway. So when it comes to like sitting down at the end of the day and feeling like, oh, okay, I feel accomplished, most people are like, I feel completely drained, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm responding to emails, and then I'm responding to a message on Instagram, and then Facebook, and then a text message, and then this new Telegram thing, and over here and over there. And it's just
Yeah.
like,
There's too
you
much
know,
social media stuff. I don't even. I can't even.
yeah.
I can't even get into all of it.
Yeah. So mindfulness, I think, is the opposite of that. So whatever that is for somebody, I mean, it could be like slowing down your breathing, walking your dog in a park, or like, you know, looking at your newborn child in the eyes and just being amazed, and like time stops for what feels like eternity, but it's just 5 seconds, you know? So I think that's the mindfulness. But I think a lot of people think mindfulness means you have to be like a monk on a meditation cushion with your legs crossed, and then you levitate, and like, you know, the whole world turns into like this kaleidoscope, and your mind is blown and your third eye is open, and, you know, all these beautiful flowers start coming out of the walls, and you're hallucinating or something like crazy. But it's really
which is awesome
simple.
in theory, don't get me wrong. But I mean, it's extremely unpractical for people in our society. So I think it's the examples you gave are really valuable. But in your experience, what would you say is the most significant benefit you've witnessed or experienced from mindful practices?
Yeah, so I mean, as far as like mindfulness meditation, I started, well, actually, let me back up a little bit. So my uncle was like huge into the transcendental meditation community in the 60s, 70s, and still is, practicing TM. And he taught me how to do transcendental meditation when I was probably, I must have been almost 10 or around that age.
Awesome.
And I, you know, I did not practice TM every day since I was 10 years old. I'm not a saint, but I got my mantra and I learned about it, and I practiced it off and on, you know, until now. And then in high school, I did, in high school and college, I did a 3-day mindfulness meditation retreats, one in Vermont, northern Vermont, one in northern Arizona, where I was in college for a little bit there. And those, I think, were really helpful at those times, because those can, like, early college and late high school can be rough times for teenagers, for sure. Especially if you're like, you know, where I grew up, it was like you have to know what you're going to do for the rest of your life when you're like 14 or 15, which is just stupid, because your brain's not fully developed until you're 30, and your prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed until you're 22, and that's when you're done with college usually. So it was a lot of pressure. It was like great expectations, like figure out your life now. And so it was nice to have that kind of outlet to kind of slow time down a little bit and just say like, hey, it's okay to like be here now and enjoy this time now. So that I would like to do a week-long mindfulness retreat, because especially with all the things on my plate right now, and the things that I want to accomplish in the next year, I feel like that would be really important to slow down that much and have that luxury to do that. It's hard. I think it's hard for a lot of people to take a week off and do that and just like put your cell phone down and be like, hey, I'm out, you know, I'm going away.
Yeah,
but
I hear you. So we're definitely going to stay in touch, because my girlfriend, her best friend, and I, well, we didn't obviously do it last year, but every year going to Costa Rica for a yoga and mindfulness retreat.
Oh, nice.
For a week. So we'll definitely stay in touch for that.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if you haven't been to the rainforest in Costa Rica, I know that's not everybody's thing, but it's not like in the middle of a hut with no electricity or AC for some people. So I mean, it's really, really beautiful, and it's an amazing time. So I'll definitely give you some more details about that if you're interested. But what I do want to shift on, because I got a lot of stuff to get through with you, is about what you're doing now. Because this is, as you alluded to a little bit earlier, some really, really important things about finding the root cause. And when it comes to hormone disorders in men and women, it's not, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why that can be the case. And usually I would imagine that it's multifactorial, and you kind of have to put all the different puzzle pieces together. So what are some of the most commonly experienced hormone disorders for men and women that you're seeing now? Sure.
I'll start with men. So usually there's some subclinical hypothyroidism, so low thyroid, which will disrupt the androgen receptors. And it may be something that their primary care doctor usually won't test. Like they'll usually test TSH and reflex to T4, which, if someone's listening, that just means they test your anterior pituitary signaling hormone to your thyroid, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, and then T4 is your inactive thyroid hormone, and then it's activated in your gut, your liver, and your peripheral vascular system through enzyme steps to T3. And so 15% of the population doesn't convert that well. So 15% of the adult population is going to have lower than optimal T3 potentially right off the bat genetically. And then there's lifestyle things, there's, foods and things like that that can disrupt the thyroid. And they're called anti-nutrients. So a lot of people are eating those, and they're probably disrupting their gut and disrupting that T4 to T3
It's
conversion.
funny. You just said a trigger word, anti-nutrients. I've been
Yeah.
hearing that term thrown around a lot, especially with sugar.
Yeah.
Brief, just quickly, is there anything you can say about sugar being an anti-nutrient as to
Um, well,
how real that is?
I don't know about sugar so much, but what I'm talking about is like, let's say you're eating a vegetarian diet, which for some people they may need to eat a more vegetarian diet or a pescatarian diet because blood type A does better on that diet, and that's fine. But then you're trying to get proteins from like beans, lentils, and other things like that. And if you don't soak them or sprout them long enough, and you don't cook them the right way, and your gut has a gut infection or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is very common, and with America, and you've got some prozoal parasite from drinking the water, which are really you can just get that from backpacking in Montana and drinking bad
Mhm.
water out of a stream.
Wow.
So let's say that's the case, like you have a prozoal parasite and maybe some bacterial overgrowth. There are opportunistic bacteria that should be there, but they're just too much. And then you're eating un soaked or sprouted beans, legumes, lentils, and you're eating a lot every day, those have anti-nutrients in them that could disrupt your gut and potentially disrupt thyroid,
Gotcha.
especially legumes like soy products. So soy for men is, unless it's fermented at small amounts, because a lot of people are like, Okinawans live forever. Well, they eat fermented soy. They're not like chugging a gallon of soy milk every day that has like aluminum in it and stuff. They're having like if you've ever been to Japan, like the serving sizes are like less than a palm size for
Mhm.
a guy, right? So very small servings. There's usually fermented soy, and there's usually a lot of other vegetables involved, and it's not just like a US we supersize everything. So it's like, oh, soy is good, and that's the way it was in the late 90s. And Dr. Diadamo is recommending like blood type A people eat soy. And now we know soy has a lot of problems. So um, just the way it's processed too, and a lot of chemicals and pesticides. So
Mhm.
that is also a cause of low hormones, plastics, herbicides, pesticides, diesel fumes. So if a guy's working like on a construction site or a trucker and he's around a lot of diesel fumes, that could cause low hormones or
Oh, I
disrupt
didn't know that.
thyroid
Yeah.
or testosterone levels. The endocrine organs in general are very sensitive to fat soluble toxins. So
Yeah.
a lot of toxins, period, are fat soluble, including THC. And there's research that shows THC and cannabis products increase testosterone, and then there's research that shows that they decrease testosterone. And then there's research shows that it affects memory and the hippocampus, and then there's other research that shows it's great for like neurodegenerative conditions like Parkinson's. So it just, I think it depends the strain, the person, and how clean that cannabis is. But I've had people message me about how cannabis has caused their low testosterone and they're smoking every day. So that and drinking a lot of IPAs could decrease your testosterone. So long story short, there's a lot of lifestyle factors that a lot of people are doing either consciously or unconsciously as habits or exposures that they had either in utero or throughout their life that are decreasing their testosterone, which is why we've seen young men, which is why I see more 20 to 35-year-olds than I did 8 years ago,
Mhm.
So a lot of people think like low T is, aka andropause, male menopause, happens around age 49 to 51. And then after that, you have low T the rest of your life. And that's just not the case. Andropause or low testosterone can happen at any age for a variety of reasons. You could have insulin resistance and you could just be eating too much carbs, and be skinny fat.
Mhm.
And maybe your genetics just predispose you more to like that diabetes kind of insulin resistance response to the way you're eating. So there's a
What about
lot
for
to it.
What about for women? Some
Mhm.
of the hormone disorders that you're seeing.
Yeah, so and I guess I would just add for men and women, the person who talked about mold, that's going to affect their thyroids and their gonads.
Hmm.
Lack of sleep apnea is going to affect muscle mass, lean muscle mass, and gonad size and atrophy of the gonads. So that goes for ovaries and testes. Um, so if you get less than 7 hours of sleep on most nights and you're actually tracking your sleep, not time in bed, that will decrease your hormones across the board. A lot of what I'm seeing with women, young, mostly healthy women in their late 30s and 40s, is that they have um, low thyroid, sometimes Hashimoto's, and some of that's happening in men too. And then they have low hormones across the board, like premature menopause. And that may be because they had mold or other infections, or some people, they don't have a break. Like they have no support in their life. A lot of moms,
Hmm.
and they're like working a career or running their business as an entrepreneur and taking care of the kids. And there's like the parental archetype, especially for mothers, is that everybody gets taken care of and then they're last. And then they get the like whatever they get, 5 minutes of time to take a breath. And so if that's a mother's lifestyle and it's like the husband's working long hours, she's working 40 to 70 hours a week, and then there's, 1 to 3 kids to take care of after work. And it's like, I've just seen people have that premature menopause, or some people call it even premature ovarian failure. And that could just be like the grind has been so extreme for so long that when you say, "Can you get 7 hours of sleep?" They're like, "I can't. I have to be with my kids," or I have to go to work, So there's no room in their schedule for exercise. There's no room in their schedule for more sleep, and it can be a real grind for them. So those people usually need hormone replacement therapy, and potentially a life coach or a health coach to kind of work around and see what can be done and troubleshoot some of this lifestyle stress.
So
Um,
with people like that you're referring to, men or women, and if they're seemingly healthy, they don't necessarily have anything that they would say is severe, and they're like say they get blood tests and they get all the normal tests that come back that say they're normal, or that the levels are normal. What's something that you would suggest that those people turn to at that point?
Yeah, so a lot of times doctors will say your hormone levels are normal, but they're not optimal. So similar to our conversation about vitamin D, where when I had a 32 vitamin D in Seattle, my MD said my vitamin D was fine. And then I started taking vitamin D because it was end of fall, beginning of winter. I knew I needed vitamin D, especially in Seattle. We had zero sunshine most of the winter. And usually you're not outside even long enough in a t-shirt. Definitely not outside in a t-shirt to get enough sunshine to
Yeah.
make a difference. So vitamin D is a hormone. So that's a great example for testosterone, for estrogen, estradiol, progesterone. Most people that I see, a lot of them may not have a diagnosed symptom. They may just say, what, I just don't feel like myself, or my significant other says that I am more grumpy, or that I'm less motivated. Like I don't want to go shopping with my wife, or um, I don't have any extra energy at the end of the day, or I fall asleep on the couch right around dinner time, or my work life is starting to suffer a little bit. I'm noticing it, but my boss hasn't noticed it yet, and I don't want to lose my job, or I want to get this promotion. Sleeping 3 hours a night because they have horrible anxiety and panic attacks, most of them. It's more these kind of subclinical symptomologies that it's like, I'm just not the way I used to be. I know something's off. And I know something's off because I've been going to the gym for 25 years or 10 years. And for the last 3 years, I haven't increased my squat weight. There's been no increase in strength and endurance. And I'm only doing 2 workouts a week because it takes me 3 days to recover from my heavy lift day. And I know something's wrong because my friends are, on testosterone as a guy, and they're doing awesome, and they look like, like a fitness model, and I'm the same I was 2 years ago. Or it's something else like, hey, I'm a grandfather or a dad or a mom, and I just don't have any energy to play with my kids, and I'm more moody and short with people, and like that's like dopamine and serotonin imbalances. So it could be like a mood like symptom, or it could be more skeletal muscle. They're just not getting that lean muscle mass. Low libido is very common. Them is like fatigue and low libido, and maybe erectile dysfunction. So, and or just weaker erections. Like if you're a guy and you're not getting any morning erections ever, like 7 days a week, you get maybe one a month or none, then that's a red flag that something's wrong. Like you're not sleeping enough, your testosterone's low normal. And a lot of doctors, for men and women, when you go and talk to them about your hormones, if you're within normal ranges, they'll just kind of say you're fine. And that kind of screws with people's heads, and they're like, well, it's all in my head now.
Yeah.
Especially guys. Like, you don't need another person saying it's all in your head, because then you're like, well, I feel like an idiot because I took time out of work to go get this done, and then it
creates more stress.
Yeah, you don't need someone not validating your reality more than you would not validate your own reality.
So what do you suggest these people do? What's the next step beyond that? Because, I mean, obviously there's something.
Yeah, so for guys, you can just Google the Adam questionnaire, or you can go to my Instagram page. And my last post earlier this week was on the Adam questionnaire, and you can just check that out. You can take it online, and it's 10 questions. For women, you probably want to get the book, The Hormone Cure by Dr. Sarah Gottfried, MD. She's an OBGYN from Harvard, pretty famous author in the Bay Area. And Sarah, I've heard her speak. She's brilliant. She's basically a functional medicine OBGYN. And she has quizzes on her website too, so if you don't want to buy her book, but in her book there are quizzes for women. You can take those questionnaires and quizzes, and then I would get some blood testing and a Dutch test and do blood and urine testing, and then work with a doctor like me, if not me, someone who does look at hormones and optimal levels and has been doing it for a while, and it's not their first rodeo, so to speak, and they know what they're doing and they can help you. Because when you get the labs yourself, like in some states you can order labs yourself as a patient, it's not going to make a lot of sense if it's within the normal range. You're going to kind of be like, well, I don't feel good, but like my progesterone says it's in normal range, but it's at the bottom of normal range for the follicular phase or the luteal phase. And if you have low progesterone, progesterone correlates with GABA. If you have low testosterone, that correlates with dopamine. If you have low estrogen, as male or female, that correlates with serotonin. So we can see how these hormones interact with our brain and our moods. And there's receptors in the brain for all hormones, including thyroid. There's receptors in the heart for testosterone. Most of the receptors for testosterone in the brain and the heart, for example. So I think a lot of people are like, well, I don't have any of those sexual symptoms. Like, then I must be fine because my sex hormones must be fine. Well, maybe your body composition has changed over the last 2 to 5 years, and you don't like that, and that's your hormones and your cortisol imbalance and stuff. And so getting that other data and working with a professional who's a specialist in the area, and not wasting your time with somebody who's a generalist, and using that person for like the life and death stuff, which is what the hospital's for, and then optimizing your health. A lot of people think they have to wait for the tires to fall off the car and like the engine to fall out to do something about their health, but you don't have to wait until you can no longer have erections, even with Viagra. You don't have to wait until you're going through menopause as a female to look at your hormones. Perimenopause is real, and there can be bloating and digestive issues with perimenopause, mood changes. Maybe you used to be really friendly with people and now you're feeling more kind of grumpy as a man or a female, and you're just like, I don't want anybody in my house. And especially with COVID, it's probably the case, but like, I don't want to like talk to anybody, and I kind of joke, but there's something like called grumpy old man syndrome, and that you don't have to be an old man to have low T. As I said before, you could be 37 and have grumpy old man syndrome and just be like, I'm only going to do the bare minimum every day to get through the day, and then I'm going to watch my TV show and read my magazine and go to bed, and
Yeah.
everybody leave me alone. And that could be low testosterone and low dopamine, and you could feel a lot better. And maybe, yeah, you're an introvert and you don't want to be around a lot of people all the time, but you don't have to kind of like suffer in this kind of subclinical depression and unmotivation state where everybody's like, oh, I want to stay away from that person, you
Yeah,
know?
we always talk about, or we always hear about women going through menopause and things like that. And you mentioned andropause, which is what happens with men. Can you just briefly tell us about some of the changes that men go through, and when those types of like those benchmark things that occur throughout life?
Yeah, so after age 30, everybody's testosterone, their total testosterone goes down 1% on average per year from the research we have, and their free testosterone about 1 to 2%. So your free testosterone is more important in some ways because it's not the testosterone that you're just making, it's the testosterone that's available at any given moment for your cells to use. And so a lot of people only test the total, but what happens is let's say you actually have andropause, the loss of testosterone is more than that 1% or 2%, and it's more drastic. And people usually notice like they're not gaining any muscle mass. Like if you're 20 to 50 and you're going to the gym 4 to 7 days a week, hopefully you're not going 7 days a week, but 4 to 6 days a week, and you're working out hard and you're getting enough protein and macronutrients, enough sleep, and you're not gaining muscle mass, something's off,
Yeah.
especially if you're like 23. You should be putting on muscle pretty well if your stress is managed and all that stuff. And once I see these young guys, once they get their testosterone up closer to 900 and 1,000 total T and 25 to 35 free T, they're putting on, in 2 months, they put on 10 pounds of muscle and they're like, man, I feel awesome. Libido's back. And they're not bulletproof. They still have times where they're stressed and they're like, I don't feel good, something's off. And it's like, yeah, well, you just moved, you started a new job, you started a new
Yeah.
school, whatever.
Yeah.
But point being is, so some of the symptoms could be around muscle mass. Some of the symptoms could be just fatigue, low energy. I already talked about mood a lot, so it could be low motivation or feeling kind of depressed or grumpy, or just mentally, mental health. You're not yourself. You're not wanting to do hobbies or activities you used to do a lot. You don't really want to go to the gym anymore, and you're pushing yourself to do that.
Hmm.
Other things would be uh, low libido. So I think I talked about that a little
Yeah.
bit. So if their libidos decrease, if 1 to 2 years ago they were having sex once, twice a week, and now they're having sex once a month or every other month, and they're in a long-term committed relationship, then something's wrong. There's either it's their libido, their partner's libido, or both, or significant other, or wife, or husband, whatever. So, like most people are like, oh, well, we have sex once a month and that's fine. But optimally, if your libido is going well and you're not a workaholic, then you would be having sex ideally at least once or twice a week or more. And you should be waking up, 6 out of 7 mornings with a morning erection
Hmm.
as a guy, unless you've like had a surgery for prostate cancer, and
Yeah.
that's
That makes
that
sense.
whole nerve plexus has been ruined and you can't get an erection again. But yeah, so other signs and symptoms of low T, uh, so more body fat than you used to have could be a sign of more estrogen or high cortisol, which will lower your testosterone. Um, you could have inability to like grow a thick beard in general.
Uh-huh.
So if, let's say, 5 years ago your beard was like really full when you grew out your beard, and now it's like more sparse, that could be low T. Um, what else? Work performance. So if your either physical or mental work that you're doing is not what it used to be, and you're dragging your ass every morning, you have to drink like a pot of coffee to be motivated and get through your workday, then something's wrong. It's usually
Yeah.
adrenals and testosterone, maybe adrenal, thyroid, and testosterone. But I've had a lot of patients who are like, yeah, I take like a caffeine pill and I drink, half a pot of coffee, and then in the tech world in Seattle, people chew on nicotine gum to get through their day, and it's like, well, you're not going to get an erection because those are all vasoconstricting substances. and you're pushing your adrenals really hard, and now your testosterone is going to crash because of that. So a lot of it could be lifestyle too, and then their estrogen skyrockets, because when cortisol skyrockets, then it pushes estrogen and aromatase harder. So a lot of these guys are, and then they're at night they're coming down with cannabis and or a couple of IPAs, because those are more sedating for them, and then that pushes estrogen up higher. So a lot of it could be around their work environment. And if you think about it, if you're a career guy or lady, most of your time in your day, if you're working 40 plus hours a week, like most of the adults that I work with, is spent at work. So most of the impact on your health is with that work culture. So if your work culture is like some of the people that I've worked with, where they're at a tech startup or another business startup, and they're expected to work 13 to 15 hours every day, and if they work 11 or less hours, then they're a slacker. That's a very toxic work culture, and you need to get the hell out of there ASAP. Yeah. There's no amount of hormones or substances or, ozone IV therapy or whatever, coffee enemas that are going to save your ass, literally. So like I say that all the time, because I've met with those patients and they're like, smoking cannabis, drinking wine or beer every night, and they wanted to go into like a room and just scream because they can't take that kind of insanity anymore. And that is insanity. There's no, unless that's your own company, you shouldn't be under that kind of pressure unless you willingly consent to putting yourself under that pressure. And then if you do, then you have to know, okay, well, there's a time limit. I'm going to be out of here in a year or two, and 100%. Figure out how to get through that without, because usually those patients of mine are borderline suicidal. And so
well, we have a few more minutes. I know there's so much to talk about with this topic. I just want to get to two more questions. There were more things that I wanted to get to. Maybe we can jump on here and do another episode sometime soon, because there's just, like I said before, just so much to talk about with this topic. Obviously. So obviously being a naturopathic doctor, what are some of the common treatments that you utilize? And obviously briefly, because we just have a few minutes. But again, being a naturopathic doctor, what are some of the treatments that you utilize often versus what some conventional medical practices would utilize?
Yeah, so lifestyle, diet, sleep, nutrition, tracking those things, macronutrients, micronutrients, nutritional supplements, herbal medicines and supplements and extracts, CBD, meditation, exercise, and the right kinds of exercise at the right time. Also, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. So instead of like androgel for testosterone, it's a bioidentical cream or injection. And I don't do pellet therapy. I'm not a fan of it. So it's usually injection cream.
Having an herbal background, I was going to ask you about herbs and things like that.
Yeah, so it's usually a lot of herbs, nutrients. So there's kind of like two types of nutrient supplement interventions, like two categories I put it in. There's short-term interventions that are usually like 1 to 6 months, where it's like, okay, you're going to take this thing, oil of oregano and berberine to kill the gut bacteria that's growing in your gut and the yeast growing in your gut. And then there's other things that are like vitamin D or a B complex or a multivitamin or zinc that you're taking long term, because there's no way in hell you're going to get that from a great diet, right? So that it's more like nutrient replacement, right? Like our topsoils are deficient of trace minerals, so you probably need some trace minerals or electrolytes, especially if you're exercising a lot. So maybe you need that on your workout days. So there's kind of two phases, and I usually explain that to my patients. And a lot of what you see online on these online questionnaires through Dr. Blah blah blah, I won't say people's names, so they can sell their branded supplements, is like a questionnaire, and it's like, you need antioxidants. Okay, well, eat some berries. Like, you need vitamin D, and you need this, and you need that. And then the people do these 10 to 20 questionnaires, and then they're buying these supplements from these people, or going to a supplement store online, and they're buying $300 to $500 worth of supplements every month, and they maybe only need like $100 of those supplements, and then they need $200 for 2 months of these other supplements that are actually going to get to more of the root cause stuff we talked about in the beginning. And then they won't have to take as many supplements next year or after the next 6 months. So if you're spending that much money on supplements and you still feel like crap, then you need to find out what's really going on. And so that's why I kind of like break it up into those phases. The same with herbs. So, like I have like ashwagandha complex here from MediHerb, which is a herbal medicine company out of Australia. And I take this every morning, like probably five, 6 mornings a week. And, and I take breaks, but am I going to stop taking that after 6 months? Probably not, because ashwagandha is good for so many things: thyroid, adrenals, testosterone, DHEA, energy, non-stimulating, all that good stuff. So there's, I think a lot of people get caught up in like, either they're against taking any supplements and they're like, I'm only going to take one thing because that's what they're used from the allopathic model. And it's not going to really move the needle doing that. And then there's therapies. So there are IV nutrient therapies. There's IV ozone. There's hyperbaric oxygen therapy. There's other types of IVs you can do. Like I talked about IV chelation, and I usually refer out at this point for those things. I used to do a lot of IV therapy myself, but nobody wanted to come to downtown Seattle and park and take time off of work because that would disrupt their workaholic schedule, right? So IV glutathione, I used to do that too. So I don't do as many procedures anymore, but there's a lot of naturopathic procedures you can do. You can do a bunch of detox things, and if you've had concussions, which lowers hormones and disrupts hormones and mood, you can do a lot of hyperbaric chamber stuff, and even rent to own a hyperbaric chamber and put it in your own house during this whole COVID stuff. And that can be huge while you're taking key nutrients for your brain to get well, more than probably most things you would do from a allopathic neurologist.
We got to get you to South Florida, man. I mean, there's tons of people down here that would do stuff like this, that would take the time and go spend the money and do this kind of procedures. So
yeah, I would love that. We got to get naturopathic doctors licensed down here. Right here, they're trying to do it by 2022, but there's some blockages. So
of course, obviously, yeah. So we were talking about a lot of hormone deficiency things and signs and symptoms and treatments and what people go through in their daily life, which the daily life and environmental factors obviously overlap with this. But how can we optimize our hormone levels? I mean, if someone's generally healthy, how do you go about getting their hormones? I mean, if people are feeling fine, they're not going to go get their hormones checked. I mean,
right.
So what are the first couple of things you'd recommend people who feel normal and maybe even are, like you said, there's ranges of normal, but even if they're in that mid to high end of normal, how do we optimize?
Yeah, so I'd get your sleep up to 7.5 to 8+ hours of sleep, and figure out if you're not sleeping more than 7 hours, why. So you could get blue light blocking glasses, turn down all the lights in the house, get a better sleep hygiene, and you can probably just look up how to do that online. But blue light blocking glasses, blue light disrupts hormones. We're all exposed to more blue light, so sleep is a huge part of hormone optimization. Not doing chronic cardio, so sorry marathon runners and road bikers, but kick that down a little bit, maybe twice a week or 3 times a week max, doing cardio, or less if you actually want to put on lean muscle mass, and do more weightlifting, 4 to 5 days a week weightlifting, 1 to 2 days a week cardio, and then an active recovery day. You got to eat well. So if you are vegetarian, then you got to figure out how to hit your macronutrient goals. A lot of people are fatty acid deficient and healthy fat deficient and protein deficient. And if you do eat meat, make sure that you're getting those protein goals. And most people in the US are eating way less meat than they used to. So whether you agree with that or not, there's a great book called Sacred Cow by Rob Wolf and another nutritionist. And he talks a lot about like the case for better meat. And
did it have a documentary too?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I've heard of it. That's when I wanted to watch that one.
Yeah, it's on Apple. It's on Amazon Video, Prime Video. Yeah. So you can rent it there, Sacred Cow. And I would say, try to figure out how to not like completely exhaust yourself. So when you get to the point of like
Don't
burnout,
empty your cup.
yeah, keep your cup full. If you need to eat more and you're tired because you're not eating enough, if you're tired because you're dehydrated, don't get to the point where you're completely burned out at the end of every day, whether it's a weekend or a work day, and schedule rest time, schedule downtime, schedule your workouts, schedule sleep, schedule sex, schedule all these things, because if you don't schedule them, then they're not going to happen. And then what happens is all the to-do list takes over your days in your life. And then you're going to wake up 10 years later and you're going to be like, why do I feel like crap? And then you will have low
Yeah.
hormones. So you got to optimize your life for optimal hormones. And a lot of people are like, you know, decreasing carbs, decreasing fats, decreasing protein, and then they're running 5 miles a day. And if you just switch that on its head, then you would, because if you don't have enough fats, you're not going to make hormones. If you don't have enough proteins, you're not going to make hormones.
Yeah.
So, you know, testosterone comes from pregnenolone, which comes from cholesterol. So you got to have enough cholesterol. If you have less than 150 total cholesterol, you can go get that done by your primary care doctor. You're probably not making enough hormones. And your brain's going to suffer, your performance in work, your mood's going to suffer, and then eventually you're going to have very, very low hormones, and then you're going to need testosterone therapy or other things.
Something you talked about in all of those things about optimizing, which are obviously all very important. I think two of the biggest ones from what I've learned is sleep, and then obviously nutrition. So being plant-based myself, and I know a lot of people that are plant-based, and like you said, overall, I think people are just eating less meat. And what are some of the ways that you would suggest that people that eat very little meat or eat no meat or animal products in general get those macronutrients that you're talking about?
Yeah, so for guys, especially, flax seed is, unless you want to have no libido, I wouldn't do a lot of flax oil or flax seed. And it's even contraindicated in women with like estrogen positive breast cancer genetics and stuff like that, for breast cancer survivors and people with breast cancer. But if you can go a little bit more pescatarian, if that's okay with you, and get on a fish oil, then you can get those fatty acids. And the reason why I say that is because the ocean is so polluted that a lot of the larger fish, especially things like tuna and even some of the larger salmon, are high in heavy metals like mercury, and even sardines can be high in mercury. So they're cleaning that out of most high quality fish oils. Krill oil just doesn't get you there as much to the fatty acid levels you need to. I've yet to see a patient who's even eating fish every day without taking fish oils every day get their fatty acid levels up to where they need to be for heart health and brain health. The other thing I would say is that like you can get organic non-soy protein powders if you digest them, usually like pea protein. Some people are sensitive to pea protein and are allergic to it. So you can do that 2 or 3 times a day and supplement your protein to try to get higher levels. You can eat fermented soy if you digest it, like tempeh, or try other things like, I mean, even almond milk and coconut milk has a certain amount of fats and healthy proteins in there. So, nut butters are a healthy source of fats like almond butter and stuff like that. And then track it. So get MyFitnessPal or Chronometer or something like that, and just track it every day or every other day, and see if you're hitting your goals for your keeping lean muscle mass or gaining more lean muscle mass for protein intake, and see if you're hitting those goals for fatty acids and fats and things. But that would be my suggestion. And then you just got to track that number, and it's different for every person. So if someone's older, younger, male or female, or taller, or weighs more, then it's going to be different. So it can be hard, plant-based, but not impossible.
Yeah, you just have to, like you said, track yourself or watch yourself and just be mindful of what you're eating, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, so just a couple more things. So one of the things that I want people to understand is that the clients that you typically work with. So what
Mhm.
is your focus? Like where do you, the people that are looking, or what are the people that you're looking to help most,
Yeah,
or who are?
so most of the people that I'm looking to help are, I would say, until maybe the last 4 months. Typically, my patients were age 35 to 55. There's some outliers, and I've been getting more people in their 20s and early 30s over the last couple of years, and I'm fine working with them too. I would say people that are looking to live a high performance life. So whether that's both their career, their relationship, their exercise life, and they want to live completely at optimal. So the way I kind of explain this, if going to your primary care doctor and getting your blood checked with their basic lab testing that's covered by insurance every 1 to 3 years is, you know, getting your Honda Civic oil change and tires change and all those things as needed. And that's like the bare ass minimum for that Honda Civic, which is a great car. This would
It was
be
my
like,
first car, actually.
yeah, yeah, we have a Honda in the car, SUV, but anyway, in the driveway. But anyway, the work I do would be taking it up a notch, saying it like, this is your sports car. Your body's an F1 sports car, and we're going to tune that car so that you can be living optimally, so that there's less chance of you having a heart attack. There's less chance of you getting dementia or Alzheimer's if you have a family history of those things, or cancers or other things. Not to say that those things will never happen,
Yeah.
because statistically we're all going to have one or more of those things happen to us, or diabetes. But people are losing weight, they're reversing diabetes, prediabetes, high cholesterol, a lot of these things that otherwise they would get worse and worse and become other illnesses, by working with me. And they're excited about it, and their friends, families, and coworkers are like, "You look 5 years younger." They lost 30 or 22 to 37 pounds in 10 weeks, and they're like floored, and they have to get all new clothes and new wedding ring, and that's their problem now.
Hmm.
Instead of being like, I keep gaining weight and I can't get rid of it. And maybe they've heard me on a show like yours or someone else's show, and they're like, I have one or all those symptoms you mentioned of low hormones, and my relationship with my wife or husband is suffering because of it, and I want to fix this because I want to have a better relationship, and we haven't had sex for 2 years.
Yeah.
Maybe it's that, or maybe it's a male or female infertility thing. So it can be a lot of different things, but usually the people I work with are like, I need to perform at optimal 99% of the time. I know I'll have a bad day here and there, but I want to look good. I want to feel good, and I want to play hard and work hard. And I don't want to suffer because I want to play hard and work hard.
Awesome. 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 Thank you so much for that. Final question. If this was the last time you'd ever had to share your thoughts and you could only share three things that people should start implementing in their lives immediately to improve their health, what would they be?
Walk and lift weights, and sleep more, and do things that make you happy or joyful. So whatever makes you happy, whether that's like closing a new deal at work or spending time with friends or family, the people and things that make you feel joy.
Awesome. I completely agree. And I mean, all three of those really, really important for my life. So awesome, Sam. Thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate you. And thank you everybody for watching. Sam, can you just give us a quick recap of your business, location, anything that you do online, things like that? I know your Instagram is at Dr. spelled out, Dr. Sam Madeira, Madeira. Please let people know how they can reach you and anything else that you might be doing online for people to look up.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to that, my Instagram handle, as you mentioned, you can go to all the links in my bio. And I have my own podcast, the Dr. Madeira Show. You can check on all major platforms. If you are more apt to get on my website and look at things that way, you can go to apollohealthclinic.com. And there's, for men and women, there's free downloads for perimenopause and andropause. And you just put in your first name and email, and then the link's sent to you, and you can check that out. And that can help you out if you're like, hey, I don't, I'm not ready to work on this with a doctor yet. And I can give you a template of like how to start feeling better and getting the results you're looking for. If you're on Facebook, still, I have two Facebook groups. So one's for men and women. It's called Apollo Health Tribe. And the other one's for men. It's called Live Strong. And there's people in those groups that are all kinds of people from all over the world. So you can check out those groups. And I try to post in there more and more, but I'm also on, the same groups are on MeWe, because I'm slowly getting away from Facebook with all their privacy policies and community guidelines that are wacky. So
Gotcha.
Anyway, so those are the areas you can find me, and or you can just follow me on Instagram and go from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And everybody, thank you for tuning in and watching, whether you're watching this live or you're watching the replay of it. I always welcome your comments, feedbacks, and suggestions. Check out all the episodes on my YouTube channel, The Art of Mindful Medicine. Also my website, www.mindful.doctor. And of course, you can check out the episodes out on Instagram, because we are on Instagram Live, and I always let you guys know at least a few days in advance when we're going to have a new episode. Again, I really appreciate you guys all for watching. And as always, I end with a quote. This is from Paulo Coelho. Waiting is painful. Forgetting is painful. But not knowing which to do is the worst kind of suffering. So I think that's very relevant to some of the things that we talked about, is when you just don't know what to do and you don't have any kind of direction and you don't know where to turn or who to go to. So very, very meaningful. And again, Sam, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you and your time. I know it took a little bit more than an hour, but I'm very grateful. So thank you so much. And everybody, remember, stay awesome, stay mindful, and I will see you next time.